So, good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's afternoon, yes. Welcome. We're doing Solving Complexity with Curation. Curation seems to be having its moment. As we heard earlier, could be even a full-on industry movement. It's moving quality control and packaging more upstream. It's got a lot of promise for efficiency, optimizing data, and through the supply path and increased bid density. Maybe a competitive edge with the higher win rates. We're going to hear a lot more about that. Some are calling it the future of programmatic efficiency. Others dismiss it as a rebranded ad network. So we're going to unpack that a bit. And in the next 30 minutes, we're going to find out what really is the truth about curation, hopefully cut through some of the noise and the jargon with this amazing panel here, and see whether it really delivers and where it adds value, etc. So we've got a great panel, a publisher, a tech company, 2 agencies, and this should be fun. So let's do quick intros. If you can just tell me who you are, where you're from, and just in one word, what you think curation is really solving for.
All that together, wow.
Yeah, all that together.
Hi, I'm Chris Edwards. I am Senior Director of Media at the newly branded Rakuten TV Enterprise, launched today, an hour ago. I run the UK team, monetizing in the CTV space, video inventory through to custom formats and brand loyalty. In one word, curation, I'm going to say, it's going to be 2 words, premium content.
Okay, I'll allow it. 2 words. Over to you.
Hey, I'm Hannah Thompson. So I lead Programmatic investment solutions at IPG Mediabrands. So you all know Sean.
Some fans in the audience.
You can always guarantee that one cheerleader. So for me, I think the name's in the title of the session, but it's complexity that we're solving for here.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Emma Glenn, and I'm Head of Programmatic at Spark, part of Publicis Media. What is curation solving? I agree with Hannah, and I think complexity.
I'm Filippo. I'm the co-CEO of OneTag. OneTag is a global exchange and a curation platform. I'm Italian. The company is also Italian, but global as a business. I'm based in London. And when it comes to curation, I would say efficiency for sure right now, and we are entering an outcome-based elements of curation. So I think outcomes is the next thing about what are we solving.
Great. So we've got premium content, complexity, outcomes, and efficiency. So this is a good way to start. And what we wanted to do was kind of, as we talked about it in the prep, kind of go back to school a little bit in this first question and just talk about, just kind of level set and talk about what is curation? What actually is it from the buy and the sell side? Why is it so important today? What's the business case? So maybe we'll start with Chris and then move on to Emma for this one.
Okay, so I'm going to put a publisher hat on in the CTV space, so a little bit bespoke compared to the broader topics of curation we're going to talk about. So I'm going to say that from a publisher perspective, we've been working with curation since we started the commercial side of the business. And curation has been about the premium content, curating it into genres, into typical audiences. And as we've evolved as a business, it's that curation that we've distributed across other publishers, other devices, other TV operators. And then, moving forward to now, how we've, rely on curation is to dig deeper into the type of content. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Rakuten TV is a movie streaming platform primarily. So we would use something like an action genre to deliver against a particular audience. Now, to someone trying to buy trainers, they're going to say, well, how is action going to be relevant for my customer? So we there be working with data ID matching to be able to sort of dig deeper into the audience, whether it's behavioral, whether it's contextual, and demographic, into the audience that harnessing the data that we don't have within our own ecosystem. We don't collect data. It's a completely free to use service. So curation has been really important to us, and it will continue to be, not just in what we do at the moment with our data sharing partners, but also with what AI can be doing in the next 12 months. So, it's going to continue to grow. So important our side.
Okay, great stuff. Really powerful. Emma, tell us what your thoughts are.
sort of agreeing with Chris somewhat that it's packaging up inventory for us to enable us to buy more efficiently, be able to buy premium content, for example. So it's becoming increasingly harder with the signal losses for us to find, the right audiences in the complex kind of digital landscape that we're currently in. But it's evolving, and we want to make sure that we're buying the right audiences for our brands, make sure that that's privacy safe. So I think it's leveling up, and it's kind of bringing that supply into a more premium place. There's absolutely a place for for the open market, but Curation really allows us to buy that more efficiency. We need our campaigns, are more under scrutiny, and it gives us much more transparency, and we're much closer to our suppliers, which is really important, and making sure that we're buying the best inventory for our campaigns, I suppose, from that perspective. And it's cutting through the noise and making sure that every impression counts, and delivering best-in-class campaigns for our clients. So I think that's really opened up and changed the landscape, and we want to be closer to those suppliers.
Okay, so lots of promise with Curation.
We hope, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, it would be good to unpack a bit of what can Curation do that PMPs can't or couldn't do, and maybe stop that confusion. Yeah, Hannah.
Yeah, so I think this is a conversation we've had quite a lot internally about the different parts of the ecosystem. Kind of when we throw around the word PMP, we kind of mean slightly different things. So when we're talking about PMPs, like a publisher might think of that as like a sort of direct to supply single deal ID for one publisher. If you're working in CTV, for example, that's exactly what it is. But if we're also using PMP pipes in order to buy things that are effectively a much broader range of inventory, but using, say, like proprietary data or a format or something like that as well, but we still call it that as an agency. For us, that's PMP still, because it's using that tech. So if we're talking about the direct to supply, like those kinds of deals, I think that's where there's some things that we can do with Curation where we can start grouping those together so we can get a bit more volume through those deal IDs, working with the SSPs to do that. We can start inserting algorithms a bit more effectively. We can also start to sort of insert data more effectively as well, if we do that on the sort of supply side and do through that through Curation rather than doing it in the DSP side where there's a bit of filtering that happens. So something like an Axiom audience will get a better match rate if we do it through an SSP. But that is really dependent on how we can bundle those partners together into a marketplace, whether they're available through the same SSPs or whatnot, but also how much volume you have going through it to make the algorithms work. But if we're talking about PMPs as more just the pipe, like that's almost just a facilitator for the Curation. So that's where when we can still work with those partners that offer us that custom data or the custom formats and things like that, whilst also applying a level of quality supply through Curation to those deals and kind of get the best of both worlds.
Okay, so would you say it's a bit of a PMP on steroids?
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that. Okay, cool. And let's move on and kind of cast our mind back for those of you who were at ATS last year. And Filippo was on this same panel last year.
Same chair.
Same chair. We made sure at the same chair. And so I would love to know what has changed? How has the topic of curation and curation itself evolved since last year's panel?
Well, I think there is still, let's start with what has not changed. I think there is still a ton of education that needs to be done on curation, because curation is not new, it's true. I mean, ad networks were doing a flavor of curation. It was more static, it was not in real time in terms of optimization. So when I go and meet clients, I always ask this question, what is curation for you? What have you understood about curation? And most of the times, people are still scratching their head and they probably don't really understand what is curation and what type of benefits curation can bring to the table. So this has not changed. So there is still a lot of education, which is what I like to do and try to explain in simple terms what actually curation can bring. What has changed is that there's been a more focus on outcomes, as I said, because at the end of the day, what counts is an outcome. But again, the definition of outcome needs to be defined. What is an outcome? Are we talking about vanity metrics? Are we talking about advertising outcomes, or even better, business outcomes? So I think the focus on making sure that curation brings real value, together with the the ability to measure the outcome that actually curation can bring. So this is what technologies like ours are trying to solve right now, and trying to focus on real outcomes, leveraging on the underlying element, which is the most important thing that also Andrew Casale was mentioning this morning, which is the infrastructure. It's probably the most overlooked elements on programmatic right now, and especially on sell-side curation. The importance of the speed, the scale, and by consequence, the reducing of cost of all of that actually can help to bring real value and outcomes to the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And again, during the prep, somebody said, well, at the moment, the technology is kind of being held together by sticky tape and chewing gum, and, you know, it's still not quite there. I mean, how far off do you think we are from this utopia?
I think we are very close, but there is still too much complexity at the end of the day. So I think complexity is still not solved. Maybe AI will solve it in a few months or a few years. But I still see a ton of useless complexity. At the end of the day, I like the presentation of Sebastian before, when he said that if you want to book an ad on The Guardian, you just send an email. So that should be the simple way of doing advertising, as simple as booking a travel on Booking.com, right? So there's still probably too much useless complexity, and I think probably there's a little bit of convergence in understanding how platforms can talk to each other in a more efficient way than just what is today, which is, again, not so efficient.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. We're going to come on to more of those topics in a bit. Yeah. But let's move on to how curation strategies are helping advertisers navigate the fragmented landscape, the fragmented programmatic landscape across EMEA, you know, with regulation, complexity, as we've talked about, audience fragmentation as well. Yeah, especially in markets with diverse regulatory frameworks. So Hannah, maybe first, and then Chris, over to you. Talk to us about that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, speaking as someone from a company which is a large global company with footprints in most of the countries in the world, curation actually is quite, I don't want to say easy, but fairly easy for us, in terms of, like, we can have these kind of centralized strategies where we can set it at a global level, and then we can work with our local markets in order to build those. And actually, it's really helpful for us having, say, like, marketplaces that are built and delivered by people in those local markets with that local insight that we can access in other markets, because I think I said yesterday, it's like some of our campaigns, we'd need specialists in, like, Romania and Hungary, and, like, that's just not feasible for a team based in the UK. So what we're finding is actually having that local expertise that we can access in the UK is great. But again, I speak to that as a company that have footprints in all those local markets. If you're a smaller organization or a challenger SSP or something like that, and you don't have that kind of footprint, that makes it a lot harder to do. And then you become reliant on either trusting what's out there already and trusting the bigger partners, or going that way around. So it's an interesting topic.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. And what are your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I 100% agree with Hannah. On the other side of the fence, from a publisher perspective, having local knowledge, local feet on the ground is essential to navigate the complexities of the regulations. I mean, we were just talking earlier with what's happening in the UK in October when we have the HFSS regulations coming into play. You know, if you're planning a pan-European campaign for a chocolate brand, you know, you've got a headache to navigate around UK, but it's only UK that has those regulations. The rest of Europe is open season. So you need that local knowledge, but also, you know, combined with the you know, what you can deliver and achieve through the tech stack to be able to get to that sort of true north.
Okay. So a bit of a mix there. So, okay, interesting. So going back to you, Filippo, what role does curation play in simplifying supply paths, improving transparency across this complex ecosystem that you've pointed out?
I would say the main thing is probably the ability to pre-select the inventory for the DSPs. I think I am a strong believer of the complementarity of DSPs and SSPs. I don't think anyone should be taking over the other one. I think everyone should do its own job in the best way possible. And I think curation on the sell side could actually do a great job by pre-selecting, pre-filtering, pre-optimizing in real time, having a very fast and scalable infrastructure. So once you package that into a DLAD, then obviously you are able to pre-optimize the bid stream for the DSP to do its own job, which is, again, layering some other data or managing the campaigns and that type of complexity on the other side. But the thing is, I think is still missing. I like to make this analogy. DSPs and SSPs are almost like two people trying to agree on a night for something to do together, and they are standing on two sides of the same door, and they are talking different languages, so they don't understand each other. They're trying to predict what the other wants by going out together, but again, they are talking different type of languages, and this is exactly what happens between DSPs and SSPs. So the next evolution or frontier of curation is being able to get from an SSP what the DSP wants in real time. And this is a data loop technology, an experiment that we are currently doing, which will improve massively the outcomes, providing the right outcomes in the right context with the right efficiency by reducing cost. But again, this is still a barrier that is not fully solved in the ecosystem.
Okay, yeah, interesting. And I'm curious to hear the agency and kind of brand client perspective on that from you, Emma.
Yeah, so, our clients trust us with their advertising budgets, right? And they want to appear in, brand safe, brand suitable environments. And it really enforces the fact that we need to be working with, quality and supporting quality journalism and working with diverse publishers, etc., across the ecosystem. So what it does is it helps us and enables us to simplify and declutter that and make sure that what we are buying, we're closer to the supply. We can make better decisions. We understand the behaviours of our users, etc. And so we can make better decisions when we're buying. So absolutely, I think the DSPs and the SSPs are still kind of maybe in a bit of tug of war, and I think they're going to have to align, but we are going to be moving closer and working with the SSPs. It just makes sense with signal loss, for example, but we have to make sure that we're delivering the best-in-class campaigns and make sure that we're working with the best quality and premium inventory. It's not to say that the open market still has a place, so does PMPs. It's not saying we're taking one out for the other, but I think this can only benefit the industry, and it's better for us, and I think we just want to make sure that economically we are sort of reaching those publishers and making sure that the money goes where it needs to go, and we can, deliver those campaigs.
Okay,
just
more
to
transparency
add
there.
Something to that. It's quite an interesting point as well, probably from an agency perspective, that the SSPs and DSPs aren't really talking to each other, so we're pushing a bit more into the SSPs in order to do that level of curation, but the DSPs are actually going more into direct supply to cut out the SSPs. So there's there's value in having both, but I don't think as the industry has fully decided what it wants to do with that yet, which is a little bit of a...
And do you think one side or the other disappears, or they merge eventually, or any predictions there?
Complementary, maybe.
I think we have to, complementary. Yeah. I think they're going to have to learn to just...
Controversial.
Work together, and let's all be friends, and, let's just, we want to deliver our outcomes, let's just kind of work together. I think that's going to be those conversations, and it makes it harder for us, so we need to kind of... we also will take direction, right? But we need to deliver what we need to deliver. So can we work together rather than fighting it, I suppose?
Yeah, no, that makes
and
sense.
I might say, there might be different flavors of collaboration or one taking over the other one. So there are certain type of campaigns, like simpler campaigns, like branding campaigns. Curation can probably do most of the job by itself, while retargeting and performance campaigns, the DSP can actually do more than what curation can on the sell side can do. So maybe it depends on what the goal of the campaign is. Then a platform can do its job better than the other. It depends. It depends on the goals.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, and that leads to the next topic, which is around efficiencies. And so it would be good to understand how is it that curated marketplaces can really improve campaign efficiency and performance. And especially in regions with varied habits and consumption.
Firstly, for anybody who's ever sat down in a DSP recently, it's fewer line items to manage, which is nice. But the other parts as well, we're seeing some interesting use cases for curation with more niche brands, so something like B2B in particular, where they kind of have their own media ecosystem that sits outside of some of the other media that we would buy generally for a brand, and things like pharma, those more like regulated industries, HFSS is a good example, or in different media types, so like the emergence of CTV and CTV marketplaces, but then also looking at some of the topics, the sort of media channels that we've not really spoken about as much is things like app curation, because I think there's looking at how we can prove the value of like a premium app environment, whilst that also layering in a bit more trust in that, like guaranteeing to clients that it's premium and taking advantage of those formats and driving high performance that way as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Chris, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, precisely that is, the curation that we can deliver. I mean, I touched on premium content at the start. There's going to be a state of play where the lower funnel type inventory is going to, not disappear, but it's just going to be prioritized with premium content take precedence, because the brands are going to want the quality. The brands are going to want to ensure that their product is featured against the top content that's out there. So I think curation is going to has certainly been doing that this past year since the last time this panel was here, and it will continue to do so.
Okay, no, that's interesting. And while we've got you on the mic, we're going to skip ahead a little bit to the debate on premium, which we had a good discussion on in the pre-calls. So is curation worth the premium? How do you quantify the ROI versus traditional programmatic? And who gets to grade and say what premium is? Who gets to say what the quality is?
I mean, in an ideal world, it would be fantastic to have a grading system, but I just think that would clog up the bidding process. It would just be, no inventory would deliver through, because there'll be someone's vision of premium versus someone else's is completely different. So it's the eye of the beholder, really. But what I can say is, I think, the quality of premium content versus that's not. Look, I've got a CTV hat on in this one, so I always say CTV is 100% premium, it's studio produced, but there's other areas of how you deem content and its premium nature. So there'll always be an argument of how do you price that, how do you grade it, and I think that is already happening, where the pricing of premium content is going up and up. It's in CTV, it's evident, obviously, with Netflix coming to market, they had an extremely high CPM, and that's driving the value on type of content there. So that will continue, and eventually, I know that'll be a case where the most valuable will be the most expensive, and it'll be graded at that.
Yeah, and what are clients? What's the client perspective, Hannah? What do you think they're looking for, and how do they, do they think it's worth the premium? Just briefly, because we're nearly running out of time.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to whether we can show that it's actually buying more premium and spending more on it actually drives their bottom line. If we're just looking at media metrics, I know we talk every year about getting rid of CTR and things like that, but we're all still using them. But so things like, if we're still using those kind of metrics and looking at it, say, on like a cost per completed view and things like that, then it is just going to look more expensive. Whereas if we're starting to look at it on terms of, well, what does that then do to cost per unaided brand awareness point, or bottom line sales and things like that, we have to be able to link it back to that to be able to show the value of it.
Yeah, so it all goes back to outcomes, which brings us back to Filippo. So we're nearly out of time, so let's go into a quick fire round here. It would be great to just talk about, where do you think the future of curation is going? And we can start with Filippo and move our way around.
I mean, more outcomes and more measurement for sure, but I would say what is more interesting for me right now is looking at the poetry element of programmatic, so the message, the creative element. So curation can do a great things when it comes to selecting and packaging the right type of inventory with the right type of creative on top of that actually respects the real hero, which is the final user. So not disrupting the user experience and making sure that there is a good engagement element. I think this is what curation can bring to the next few years.
Okay, great vision.
For me, it's going to be, I think, the tech, the innovation that we're going to see in technology is going to expedite and be much faster. Because I think when you're working, so we're working closely with Index on our curation at the moment, and I just think that It's kind of pre-organized, I suppose, via our SSPs, but it then allows the tech companies that they're working with to just expedite that innovation. So I think it's going to move faster, and custom algorithm marketplaces are developing, and so it's just all of that together. I think the innovation, as I say, is just going to be faster and smarter, which can only benefit the industry.
Great.
For me, it's how we insert audiences more effectively so that we can get to more of that like outcomes and performance-led use for it.
Okay. Concise,
I'm
I
actually
like
going to combine Filippo's and Emma's response. I do believe creativity is going to be driving the sort of next phase of curation. Engagement is measured in so many different ways within media, but the technology to deliver that is what's going to be paramount. So a combination of creativity and technology.
Okay, great. So we got faster, better, cheaper, smarter, more creative. Time will tell. So I suppose watch this space. Really massive thank you to the panel. We could talk for hours about this. I've had to skip through some of our questions, but I think we covered a lot of ground. So thank you so much. Big thank you to the panelists. And watch this curation space.